Dear precious and kind, merciful Heavenly Father, on this thy Sabbath day, may thy name be esteemed as we continue our study. May the person of Yahshua HaMashiach be exalted, and may the illumination of thy light, Hadur, and thy light, Ha'ur, and thy light alone lead us into all truth, and we will be careful to give thee the praise, for it's in thy name, Yeshua, we ask, and for thy sake. Amen. Welcome back to our studies here on the Sabbath day. We're continuing on in this It Is Finished series. We're up to 13c, I believe it is, Mark 14:53, warming himself in the camp of the enemy. Okay, now I had started to read part of this, and I'm going to back up just a little bit. For they led Yahshua away to the high priest, and with him assembled all the chief priests, the elders, and scribes. Kepha followed him afar off, even unto the palace. And he sat with the servants, warming himself at the fire. The chief priests and all the council sought for witness against Yahshua to put him to death. They found none. And I'm reading from 53 on through, because we're in the 14th chapter. I believe it is the 72nd verse, so we're reading quite a portion here. There arose certain and bore false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. But neither so did their witnesses agree. The high priest stood up in the midst and asked Yahshua, saying, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witness against thee? But he held his peace and answered nothing. Again the high priest asked him and said, Art thou HaMashiach, the Son of the Blessed? And Yahshua said, I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, and said, What need we any further witnesses? Ye have heard Shalil Hashem, the blasphemy. What think ye? They all condemned him to be guilty of death. And some began to spit on him, to cover his face, and to buffet him, to say unto him, Prophesy. The servants did strike him with the palms of their hands. As Kepha was beneath in the palace, there cometh one of the maids of the high priest. When she saw Kepha warming himself, she looked upon him and said, And thou also wast with Yahshua HaNazaret. But he denied, saying, I know not, neither understand I what thou sayest. And he went out into the porch, and the cock crew. A maid saw him again, and began to say to them that stood by, This is one of them. And he denied it again. And after a little while, they that stood by said again to Kepha, Surely thou art one of them, for thou art a Galilean, and thy speech agreeth hitherto. He began to curse and swear, saying, I know not this man of whom ye speak. The second time the cock crew, Kepha called to mind the word that Yahshua had said unto him, Before the cock crow twice thou shalt deny me thrice. And when he thought thereon, he wept. We're continuing on into the next chapter, 15:1, where straightway in the morning the chief priests held a consultation. I call this the Kangaroo trial, with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and bound Yahshua, and carried him away, and delivered him unto Pilate. And Pilate asked him, Art thou the king of the Yahudim? And he answering said unto him, Thou sayest it. And the chief priest accused him of many things, and he answered nothing. And Pilate asked him again, saying, Answerest thou nothing? Behold, how many things they witness against thee. But Yahshua yet answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. Now at that feast he released unto them one prisoner, whomsoever they desired. And there was one named Barabbas, which lay bound with them, who had made insurrection with him, who had committed murder in the insurrection. And the multitude cried aloud, beginning to desire to do as he had ever done unto them. But Pilate answered, saying, Will ye that I release unto you the king of the Yahudim? For he knew that the chief priests had delivered him for envy. But the chief priests moved the people that they should rather release Barabbas unto him. And Pilate answered and said, What will ye then that I shall do unto him whom ye call the king of the Yahudim? And they cried out again, Impale him. Then Pilate said unto them, Why, what evil hath he done? And they cried out the more exceeding, Impale him. And so Pilate, willing to content the people, released Barabbas unto them and delivered Yahshua. When he had scourged to be impaled, the soldiers led him away into the hall called Praetorium. They called together the whole band. They clothed him with purple and plate, a crown of thorns, and put it upon his precious head. You can tell I'm ad-libbing some, but I'm reading it pretty straight. They began to salute him, Hail, King of the Yahudim! And they smote him on the head with a reed, and did spit upon him, and bowing their knees, worshipped him. Need I add, faint? In Luke 22:54 we read, They took him and led him and brought him into the high priest's house. Caiaphas followed afar off. When they had kindled a fire in the midst of the hall and were set down together, Caiaphas sat down among them. But a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire and earnestly looked upon him and said, This man was also with them. And he denied him, saying, Woman, I know not. I know him not. And after a little while another saw him and said, Thou also wast with them. And Caiaphas said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another confidently affirmed, saying, Of a truth this fellow was also with them, for he is a Galilean. And Caiaphas said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately while he yet spoke, the cock crew, and Yahshua turned and looked upon Caiaphas. And Caiaphas remembered the word of Yahshua, how he said unto him before the cock crow, Thou shalt deny me thrice. And Caiaphas went out and wept bitterly. Continuing on in our study, we're studying actually the 22nd chapter of Luke. We're beginning at the 63rd verse now, and we're going down to the 71st verse. So we're getting at the 63rd verse. The men that held Yahshua mocked him and smote him. When they blindfolded him, they struck him on the face and asked, saying, Prophesy, who is it that smote thee? Many other things blasphemously spake they against him. As soon as it was day, the elders of the people, the chief priests and scribes, came together and led him into the council, saying, Art thou HaMashiach? Tell us. And he said unto them, If I tell you, ye will not believe, and if I also ask you, ye will not answer, nor let me go. Hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of Yahweh. Then said they all, Art thou then the Son of the Most High? And he said unto them, Ye say that I am. And they said, What need we any further witness? For we ourselves have heard out of his own mouth. The whole multitude of them arose and led him to Pilate. Now that's verse 1 of 23, and we're at least going to go to 15, 16, 17. If we have space to 25, the whole multitude of them arose and led him to Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, We found this fellow perverting the nation, forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying he himself is the Mashiach, a king. Pilate asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Yahudim? And he answered him and said, Thou sayest it. Then said Pilate to the chief priests and to the people, I find no fault in this man. And they were the more fierce, saying, He stirreth up the people. teaching throughout Yahuda, beginning from Galilee, Hagalil, to this place. When Paliti heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. As soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him, who himself was also at Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Yahshua, he was exceeding glad. He was desirous to see him of a long season, because he'd heard many things of him, hoped to have seen some miracles done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words. He answered him nothing. The chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. Herod, with his men of war, set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. The same day Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and rulers and people, said unto them, Ye have brought this man unto me as one that perverteth the people. And behold, I have examined him before you, and have found no fault touching those things whereof ye accuse. No, nor yet Herod, for I send you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him, and let him go, release him. For of necessity he must release one at the feast. They cried all out at once, saying, Away with this man, release us unto Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Yahshua, spoke again to them. But they cried, saying, Impale him, impale him. And he said unto them the third time, Why, what evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him, and let him go. They were instant with loud voice, requiring that he might be impaled. The voices of them and the chief priests prevailed. Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. He released unto them that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired. But he delivered Yahshua, think about that, the Prince of Life, into their will. In John 18:12, we'll see how far we can get. We'll at least read to about the 26th verse, if we may. Then the band and captain and officers of the Yahudim took Yahshua, bound him, led him away to Anna first, for he was the father-in-law to Caiaphas, who was the high priest that same year. Now Caiaphas was he who gave counsel to the Yahudim. It was expedient that one man should die for the people. Shimon Kepha followed Yahshua. So did another disciple. That disciple was known to the high priest. He went in with Yahshua into the palace of the high priest, but Kepha stood at the door without. Then went that other disciple, which was known by the high priest, and spoke unto her that kept the door, and brought in Kepha. Then said the damsel that kept the door unto Kepha, Art not thou also one of this man's disciples? He saith, I am not. And the servants and officers stood there, who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold. They warmed themselves, and Kepha stood with them and warmed himself. And the high priest then asked Yahshua of his disciples and of his doctrine, which means Torah teaching. Yahshua answered, I spoke openly to the world. I ever taught in shul, synagogue, in the temple, the Bayit HaMikdash. Whither the Yahudim always resort. In secret have I said nothing. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard what I said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. And when he had thus spoke, one of the officers which stood by struck Yahshua with the palm of his hand, saying, Answerest thou the high priest so? Yahshua answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil, but if well, why smitest thou me? Now Anna had sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest. Shimon Kepha stood and warmed himself. He said therefore unto him, Art thou not also one of his disciples? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, being his kinsman, whose ear Kepha cut off, saith, Did I not see thee in the garden with him? This has been part 13, and I believe it's C. We're